Welcome to the Kelly Kinkaid Show. I am so happy it's 2023, and I had to start my new show off with a special guest that I've had a pleasure to talk with a while ago on Black maternal mortality. He has a list of titles. He's a business executive, leadership coach, healthcare strategist. He's the author of the new book, The Way Up, Climbing the Corporate Mountain as a Professional of Color. Welcome to the show, Dr. Errol Pierre. How are you today, Errol?
I am doing great. Your intro got me jazzed up, so I'm excited. I'm doing well. Great to see you.
When you called me and told me about the book that you were writing, it was coming out, I was jazzed up because when we first met, I was so in awe of your knowledge, speaking on the topic we were talking before, and we've connected. Thank God for social media now, because we've connected, so I get a chance to see your life as you see mine. And so this was a pleasure because I consider you more than just someone I talk to, an associate, a friend in my head. And so first, congratulations on a few things. Congratulations on the title of Dr. Pierre, because that is a lot of hard work. Absolutely. Congratulations. And you wrote this brilliant book. And as I read through it, I was like, was this his dissertation? Because you put a lot of work in this book. This is like your baby. How did you decide to make this book for us?
Yeah, great question. And it is my baby. And I'm glad that you saw the academic perspective of it, because I did want to make it an academic book that was palatable to a lot of people so that everyone could digest it. But what basically happened was I'm a healthcare executive. I worked at the largest plan in New York, for-profit and nonprofit. And I was able to pause. We're so busy. We're running around so much. And the pandemic actually made me pause. And so March, the pandemic hit. I found myself in the month of April with nothing to do. And I was reflecting on murder of George Floyd. I was reflecting on the disproportionate impact of COVID on people of color. And even myself, I was scared to go outside because I was like, look, this is taking Black people way faster than anyone else. Yeah. Do I go food shopping? Do I even put gas in my car? So I spent a lot of time at home in my thoughts. And I think a lot of people did that too. And I for the first time, realized how fast I was running, and still not moving as fast as my peers that are not underrepresented and are not minorities. And it took that time to reflect. It was almost 2 years trying to put it on paper. Right. So that's where it came from. And then the academic part, which is unfortunate, but it's so true, is I didn't want it to be a story of like, well, that's just his anecdotal story. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to back it up with data, facts, statistics. So I did research. I researched it like it was a dissertation. And then I also interviewed other executives of color, 11, just to make sure I'm not the only one. So it's a combination of executives of color from different industries that had the same exact story as me, and then research that shows this is true. And I think a lot of times people see a statistic and don't realize there's a human behind it. So I wanted to be human and logical and statistical. That's sort of, it was the merge of those three different things.
Amazing. When you finished the last draft of the book, what was the first thing you did?
Breathe out. No. So, I wrote it, and my fear was, one, being vulnerable, because I am very vulnerable in the book. I talk about stories that really impacted and changed my life. 2, research. I read so many research articles, so many papers, so many books that talked about why companies aren't diverse, all these studies that show bias in hiring, bias in promotions. So I think when I finally finished, it was actually a thought of like, this is so obvious. Why do we still have to tell people that this is happening in corporate America? To me, it was just so blatantly obvious that it's still a shock to me. We still have to prove ourselves to corporations that there's a problem happening. I mean, go ahead.
Yeah, let's break down the stats I found so interesting about you're someone that has you are comfortable in the C-suite. Break down some of the stats you wrote in the book as far as blacks in the C-suite, blacks in the upper management.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So there's 13% of the country is African American, roughly, give or take, right? We have 330 million people, so you're talking about 40, 45, 48 million people, roughly, orders of magnitude. You can count on your hand the black CEOs for Fortune 500 companies. The number one on your hand. There's maybe, I think the peak was 6. Sometimes we're down to 1. I think today we have 4, right? And so they say, well, it's because they're not experienced. Falsehood. As of 2020, 2022, there are more people of color, there are more black people with education, bachelor's, master's degrees from elite institutions. We just saw Claudine Gay become the president of Harvard, Haitian Black American woman. There are so many more people of color and black people that have education from elite institutions. It's a misnomer that it's education. That's a fallacy. It's false. You're telling me education leads to only 6 black CEOs? It's a joke. It's a joke. Yeah. Then it's, oh, they don't have experience. So they have a lot of education, but they don't have experience. Another falsehood. Stats I show in the book. Exponentially higher than ever before, black people and people of color that have white collar jobs. Exponentially higher. So they've been working in the field for the longest time. So it's not a lack of education. It's not a lack of experience. So what is it? That's what the book talks about. It's a combination of implicit bias and just the people in power don't make the decision.
The name of the power. That's very true. The way the name of the book is The Way Up, Climbing the Corporate Mountain as a Professional of Color. Let's start from the beginning. I love your personal stories. And it started with Teenage Ninja Mutant. Okay. I love the breakdown of all the 4 turtles and how Leonardo connected with you. It went from that to karate. Because you're such a brilliant person and it all makes sense in the book. And one of the words I'm working with in my life is discipline. You've had discipline since you've been young. Yeah. And that is an ode to your parents. You talk a lot about your parents and your father. And I would just love to get, what made you incorporate your humble beginnings in this book?
Yeah, it's great. So I am who I am because of my parents. This goes back to statistics. Not a lot of people made it from Haiti to either Florida or New York City. That's probably the 2 biggest states and cities where people migrate from. The fact that my dad had the ingenuity to get from a farm in Haiti, in Gonaïves, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, to New York City is amazing. So he's an ingenuity. He has ingenuity. He has tenacity, hard work, ethic, and he dreams big. And so I end up being born in a zip code in New York, and it dramatically changes my life. I could have been born on a farm in Haiti, and none of this would have been possible. So I never forget that in anything I do. And one of the reasons I'm back at healthcare at a nonprofit where we help, vulnerable populations is because if it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't be here. And I want to be able to help other New Yorkers that are just like my father, that were immigrants to this country that have no idea what was happening. So it's like in my bones, in my blood, to never forget where you come from. And it just reminds you to have a hand back, give a hand back. So that, my dad, I saw him work 5 jobs. He woke up at 4 a.m. in the morning. He was the last one to sleep. Mm-hmm. That's where I learned the work ethic from. I would not be who I was if it not for him. And so you talk about Ninja Turtles. Thank God he let me see the movie. I was like, I want to do karate. Right. Karate taught me discipline, and that led to a job at a beauty supply shop. And because I saw, he used to clean offices at night, and I was a kid, and no one was home to watch me, so they would bring me, out to work. So I would I would vacuum offices and things like that. It's funny, we would vacuum medical offices. So even as a kid, I was inside doctors' offices, and This probably led me to, doing work in healthcare. But seeing his discipline to put a roof over my head, when I was a kid, I'm like, if I'm going to put shampoo bottles on a shelf, I'm going to do it with the same discipline, work ethic. And, that's how I sort of got uncovered or discovered by a chief operating officer from the largest health plan in New York. She saw me stocking shelves and something about the way I stocked shampoo bottles. She asked me for my resume.
Yeah.
So that's a big deal for my story because it tells people like it doesn't matter who you are, where you are in America, you can get discovered. But at all points of time, someone's watching you. You never know who's watching. Have your best foot forward.
Well, let me add this because you're leaving out this stay ready because a part of you've been staying ready all your life because from the watching the movie, you wanted to go and do karate.
Right.
And you got your black belt and you were working and you befriended a student named Tony whose father worked at a warehouse. And
Absolutely.
like it's amazing. So talk about how in the book staying ready, because you talk about a chapter in one of your chapters about you're always at an interview and staying ready.
Yep.
And what the name of that chapter is job interviews happen every day. How
Absolutely.
shampoo changed my life and started my career. Let's talk about that chapter because I love that. I love that chapter as well.
Yeah. So, it's ironic. I think people are always seeking the next step. I want to make more money. I want the next job. And they're so focused on the goal, they're not looking in front of them at the opportunities right in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, the philosophy of a dojo when I was taking karate was you give back. You're a senpai. You're supposed to give back to your dojo. That means I was cleaning the windows for free. I wasn't getting paid.
Right.
I was vacuuming, right? And I was giving back. And there was a kid that was in my class that I taught that disbehaved in school, was rowdy, and
Uh-huh.
I took it, on myself to really focus on his behavior, really challenge him to behave better. And I didn't know his parents were watching, but Tony's father was seeing his behavior get better, and he was like floored. He's like, "How much do you get paid to do this?" It's like, "No, I'm a senpai. This is what I give back to the school. The school gave me all this training and learning, and this is the way I give back." And he's like, "This is great." He's actually behaving in school more. And one of the lessons in karate was always good. It's almost like when you watch the Karate Kid, right? Like good karate kids get good grades. Good karate kids don't misbehave. It's the same lessons that I was sharing that I learned as a turtle. Like it's the same, it's the same lesson in Ninja Turtles that
Right.
Splinter was giving to the turtles about being good citizens, right? Being good citizens to America. And that opportunity, he again saw something in me I didn't see. And it was just like, I cannot believe you're a young, I was probably 15 years old at the time. You're so young in the school, teaching class for free, teaching little kids discipline. I see the behavior change in him. Like he's like, I need to pay you. Like I don't receive money for these services. He's like,
Tony
then I
was
gotta
bad.
what?
Tony was bad. Clearly, Tony was something else.
Yeah, he was rambunctious. It reminded me of myself too. I was a rambunctious kid, a lot of energy, and that's why karate is a great outlet. And he's like, I gotta do something. He's like, at least let me give you a job and make some money. And that's really how the beauty supply job came. So again, it's you never know who you're going to meet. Even our discussion when we first met, if I didn't have my best foot forward, we wouldn't have ever built the relationship. So
Right.
I always say, you are always interviewing for your next job. You never know who you're going to meet. There's always things that happen. I remember walking on an elevator and just saying hello to someone, realizing that later on we're going to the same floor in the same meeting. Thank God I was polite to that person.
Right.
And those, you always have to be ready. I think for people of color, we don't have the opportunity to mess up because your chances come once and they're few. So you just have to take advantage of every single opportunity possible. And that's where I learned those lessons.
There's always talk about being a role model. In your position and through your career, have you felt that weight on your shoulders being in the C-suite now?
Yeah, as I talk about in the book, leading while leaving a legacy.
Yeah.
And this happens to me. I'm sure this happened to you. everyone says never meet your superstar or never meet your idol, the person you put on the pedestal, because what happens? You meet them and you're like, oh, they're
Right.
human, just like everyone else. So they they sort of
Yeah.
crumble in front of you. I don't want that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I feel the weight, and I talk about the weight, and that it's led to mental health issues, anxiety. So I had to like have therapy because I felt the weight of what I call the Jackie Robinson syndrome, which I speak about in the book, which is if you're the first, you have this sort of goal and pressure to not be the last. So Jackie Robinson breaks the color barrier. He wasn't just the first person to play baseball. He was the rookie of the year. He was the best player and the first person, right? So he was
Yeah.
the best and the first. And if he ever had any language back to the people that were screaming the N-word to him or cursing
Mm-hmm.
him, if
Mm-hmm.
he ever threw back any piece of trash that people were throwing on the field towards him,
Yep.
we would have pushed back the color barrier maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
Barack Obama, right? I
Yeah.
remember someone yelled at him when he was doing the speaker, the State of the Union speech. A white congressman yelled at him, and he turned to rebuke the person, and he bit his lip because he's like, "I'm the first. I cannot be the last."
Yeah.
There's a huge pressure of being a person of color. I think about it every day, being Black, and knowing you're the first, and ensuring that your reputation precedes you. You leave a legacy so that there's others that follow after you. Absolutely, there's pressure, and I don't think people realize it at all.
How have you dealt with um and I'm going to speak of the chapter of being honest even when it's hard, dealt with maybe being called different names, a sellout, or just yeah, how does that feel being a
Yeah,
sellout and still having to walk in the building every day? How when you wrote that chapter, what emotions did that bring out for you?
yeah, it's a great question. So ironically, and I don't talk about this in the book, but it's
Mm-hmm.
true. The first Uncle Tom was
Mm.
actually a good guy. And if you go through history, they bastardize it, and now Uncle Tom becomes a sellout. But if you read the first book, Harry Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom was a good guy.
Yeah.
Now Uncle Tom is a disparaging term.
Right.
To me, the way I think about it is um, I know why I am here. I have a vision, and I know my passion. I know my place on earth. Sticks and stones break your bones, words won't hurt you. What people are calling me, they don't know my vision. They don't know why I'm on earth. They don't know why I'm here for the long haul. They see this segment of me, maybe a minute, maybe an hour, it could be a week, and
Yeah.
they're making judgment calls on why I'm the way I am. Oh, he speaks white. Oh, he doesn't hang out with enough Black people in the office. Oh, like, okay, that's fine. But I know but I'm fighting on behalf of everyone that looks like me. I'm making sure there's diversity and equity inclusion goals for all of the management teams so
Mm-hmm.
that the company's moving forward. I'm making sure there's pay equity for women and for people of color so that we're all paid the same. So I know my fight, and someone who thinks differently, that's their problem. That's their
Yeah.
problem. So does it hurt? Absolutely. Is it isolating? Yes. Is it a lonely? Yes. I mean, I have a small circle of friends that know the same experience. That's why in interview those other executive colors, they're like, yeah, leadership is lonely. It's lonely at the top. You're not there, and people will never know what you did for them, but you know in your heart of hearts that you did it. So it is lonely. The chapter you talk about, um, I thought I'm gonna get fired. I sent this email to my CEO,
Uh,
like speaking truth to power, like, man, do not use me as a black pawn.
right.
And I thought I was gonna be gone. Um, Luckily, it was the right type of leader.
Yeah. This is a great book. I want to buy like these books for my friends that are in upper management because we all have these different conversations. And, specifically, I have a friend who has worked their way up and now they're a director of a department at a university. And they now understand, like, wow, like all the different stuff that you see, your lens changed in your book, The Way Up, climbing the corporate mountain as a professional of color. I love the analogy that you make with climbing a mountain and your experience when you went to Thailand, because it is climbing a mountain. What made you start the book on saying finding my purpose? It's find your purpose and your passion. Why was that the first chapter of writing the book?
Yeah, so the book is ironic, and I don't want to give it away, but um, I start the book at the end. I had got to the top. I had the C-suite title. I had the job that my parents could talk to all of their friends and say, my son is at the top, chief operating officer. I was being invited to panels, and people I never knew just were reaching out to me saying, Errol, can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? I was rubbing elbows with, celebrities. This was a big deal. They're like, oh, a black guy is at the top of this huge company. It's a big deal. And despite trying to get there for 15 years of my life, I get there and I was like empty. And it's crazy. It's crazy to think you want something and finally get there and realize you're not there. And the reason why I called it a mountain versus a ladder is when you tell people, oh, climb the corporate ladder, you're telling people the rungs are equally spread out and there's only one way to go, up. And it's easy. You just take one step, you move up, there's no problem. And I'm like, this is the worst advice for Black people and for people of color and immigrants and women. It's not a corporate ladder. I don't know who used that analogy. And that's what happens with leadership books. They're like, it's a corporate ladder. I was like, no, 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 no. It's circular. You go up, you go down. You have to bring equipment with you. You don't know what the weather's going to be. Sometimes you give up. Sometimes you went the wrong way and you have to go back the other way. In the middle of it being hot, it starts to rain, which happens in Thailand a lot. Yeah. So that to me was the analogy of like scaling these things. And why I said you have to connect your passion to your purpose is I got to the top and I tried to retrofit my purpose and my passion into this job and it wasn't working. Like I did it all backwards. I got to the top and I was like, oh, I want to help people in healthcare. And it's like, well, your role doesn't allow you to do that the way you want to. Like, oh, well, let me see if I can retrofit it. It's like, no, 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 we hired you to do this, not to do that. If you want to do that, go, you got to do something else.
Right.
But I was so focused on the title and the money, and that didn't bring happiness. And I wanted to articulate the emptiness I felt inside. I mean, we see people that on Instagram that look so happy, and you have no idea the emptiness that they have inside. And so if you link passion to purpose and you're not making $1 million, you'll still be happy. You'll still wake up every morning jazzed and ready to go to work. That's the way I wake up today. I'm excited to go to work. And so that's where I wanted to start it there. It's like I was starting the beginning at the end, just so people were like, wow, I can't believe you sucked away from the role like that.
I love that. We talk about, you just mentioned about seeing people happy on Instagram and stuff. Not too long ago, the passing of Stephen Twitch Boss, who all the pictures we see of him smiling. In the book, you talk about getting therapy, getting a coach. When was your moment that you were like, you know what, I need to get my balance of therapy and a coach?
And so it was in the middle of me being in that C-suite role. Mm-hmm. I realized I would go to bed at midnight. I'd wake up at 2. I'd go back to bed. I'd wake up at 4. Then I'd come to work and I would avoid going inside the office. I would just walk around South Street Seaport in circles. And I was like, oh, I don't have a meeting till 9. So let me just walk around till 8:55. When you're doing that type of stuff, you're like, something's wrong. There's a mental health issue that you have to face. On my face, everyone thought I was fine. Big wig, new job, nice suits. You're doing great. I actually performed in my role well too, but inside I was like dying, So it was hard. There is a negative connotation on mental health. I know it's in the Haitian community. I'm sure it's also in the Black community as well, of like a sign of weakness. And then also, my parents are very religious. They're like, why are you paying for a therapist? Like, go to church, tell God. I was like, you can do both. You can do both. I can pray, go to church, tell God, and see a therapist. I
Yeah.
can do all of the above. It doesn't mean I'm not religious or not spiritual. I was so against therapy, so against, because I was like, one, what is telling my problems to a stranger going to do? Nothing. Two, I'm not going to spend money out of pocket. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't make any sense for copays or whatever. And then three, just talking is not going to fix it.
Yeah.
But my anxiety levels was having a physical impact on me. I actually felt chest pains.
Mm.
I actually went to an emergency room visit where
Mm-hmm.
it happened to be gout, but which is funny. It's Nas's king disease, right? Like that's what he raps about 3 times in a
Right.
row.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
but it was still because of this anxiety. And they took all
Mhm.
these tests, and they're just like, you have to change your diet and get more sleep. That was the, you know, $3,000 later, change your diet, get more sleep. It was anxiety.
Right.
And so that's when I knew I had to get therapy. And the reason why I write the book is I'm like, don't wait that long. Please don't wait that long. Don't wait till
Yeah.
you feel it physically in your chest and that you're not sleeping because you keep waking up because your brain and your mind won't settle,
Right.
and you can't walk into your office like to start the day, to start your day. Like those are three big signs that I was sort of keeping. I was ignoring it, and it was right in
Yeah.
front of my face. So that's where therapy came from, and I talk about it in the context of having a personal board of directors. You have to have a personal board of directors, and one of your directors is your therapist. One is your coach, and also your circle of friends. That's very important. But yeah, that's where it came from.
This book is so amazing and so needed. The way up, climbing the corporate mountain as a professional of color. You got to go get it. How did you pick your 11? I'm gonna call them your. Those were your board of directors for this book.
Absolutely.
How did you pick that? And I smiled because I knew a few of the names. Denise Brown in the
Yes.
music industry. She's a legend, and Rashida Hendrix. How did you pick these people?
Yeah, it's a great point. I'm so focused on healthcare my whole entire career, 18 years in
Mm-hmm.
healthcare. I didn't want this to be a healthcare book, so I wanted it to be more broad. So I had to think of people that I look up to that would also share. Denise Brown, she's a professor at NYU, as am I. So a good friend of ours put us together, which I'm so grateful of. And once she heard the story, she's like, "I'm in. I'm in." Uh, uh, um, Rashidi, well, I knew through Jim Germanic. So Jim Germanic is a co-author with me who he was so helpful because I started the book like an academic paper, and Jim was like, Errol, you got to talk about your mom, you got to talk about your brother, you got to talk about. So he made it humanized. He helped me make it humanized, and Jim knew Rashidi. So once he heard the story, he jumped on in. The other ones I known through the years. You know, Toyin is in the book. This is a Black woman who's running a $6 billion startup in New York. She's amazing. She's amazing. Lucy Lopez is an attorney, top attorney at Spencer Stewart, huge consulting firm, just stellar. And I knew her through her husband, and she agreed to do it. These were people that they knew they had a similar story, and they're like, "You're brave to tell it all out there. I'll help you out as much as I can."
Absolutely.
And what I wanted them to do is like, well, maybe you're not Black, maybe you're not from Haitian descent. There's someone in that book you're gonna say, "Oh, that person speaks to me." So whether it's Lucy, whether it's Denise, whoever, there's someone else, and they're saying the same thing. They're saying the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
The head of diversity, equity, inclusion at American Express, Robert Childs, is in it. I'm so glad that he selected to do it because of his stature. And so, yeah, I mean, it was interesting. All the interviews, they all were reiterated the same points. And so that's when I knew I was like, okay, this message has to be said.
I love this book. I'm going to say it over and over again. Um, I love the lessons. There were a few that stood out for me. 12.1, set your own clock. You know, that's so important because I love your parents. Love your family. I love the story of after you got your internship and you get the job offer and you were a little wiser. You was like, I'm gonna wait. And once you countered offer, that final one, your father was like, I demand you to accept this job.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it's important. The reason why I talk about my parents is because um, they built such a foundation for me to get to where I got to,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to understand I had to build on what they provided for me with new lessons from corporate America. And in the book, I talk about mentorship. Quick story on mentorship, and I'll get back to the set your own clock piece. And I love this part about the book. Uh, the word mentor comes from Homer, who wrote the Odyssey, who talks about Odysseus, who's going to fight the Trojan War. And he's like, I'm going to leave my son behind for a number of years because I'm going to be fighting a war. Who am I going to trust to take care of my son, to raise them like it was me? The only person Odysseus trusted with raising his son, Telemachus, was a guy named Mentor. And so for me, understanding that story, that's the type of relationship you have to have with someone that you call your mentor. People say, oh, I have a mentor. Like, yeah. Is it like your father would have trusted this person with you to raise you? That's the degree of their knowledge. That's the degree of that you trusted them as an advisor. And that's how you should acknowledge the relationship. So if you're a mentee, are you treating your mentor like a father figure? And so I say that because people think they have mentors, but I don't think they really are leveraging the relationship as powerful as they are.
Yeah.
I would have not known to counter on that offer if I just talked to my parents because they had gray collar jobs, blue collar jobs, did not know about corporate America. I needed a mentor that was beyond their knowledge, not negating their knowledge, adding to it to help me counter and figure it out. And so I talk about like, yes, your parents are going to get you so far, but corporate America is so different than if your parents didn't grow up there than what we're used to. And if you just use their lessons, we're always in second place. To our peers that we work with that have parents in corporate America, like many of our peers that are not minority, that are not diverse, they're not immigrants, their parents grew up in corporate America and they're like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And I didn't have that. I had to get it through mentorship.
Amazing.
And
We're going to talk about set your own clock, but we're talking about mentor and mentorship, being a mentee and a mentor is so important now because we're in an age where we move around in jobs. And a lot of people now, the reason why your book, The Way Up, Climbing the Corporate Mountain as a Professional of Color is so important is because a lot of people, that light bulb is turning on like, hey, I'm not happy at this job and I really want to bake cupcakes now. Or I want to be a sommelier and I need to shed this. Having that mentor is so important. And we can now segue, to set your own clock. Adding that lesson. Why did you add that lesson in this book?
yeah, too often we match up our progress against our peers. Too often we put artificial timelines on the decisions we're going to make because of someone who's a third party. So my job might say, Errol, you need to wait 5 years before you're promoted. That's an artificial line that one person has set for you. That's not the truth. You can potentially move up, changing jobs and going to it in a different direction, not just taking what this company is saying for you. Or, Errol, I don't know if you're a VP. Maybe you need more time. I've had that happen to me, and I was like, okay. And then I took my own road. Also, matching yourself against your peers. This happens with marriage. Your friends start getting married. You're like, oh, I'm not married. And then you might lower your standards trying to get married. That's the wrong direction. Set your own clock. And it came from running track in college. When you run track, you run with a lot of people, but the only race is between you and the time you ran last time. You're not running against anybody else except for yourself and the last time you did that race and what the time was. So even though at the Olympics, you say, oh, they're first, they're second, or third, that third place winner could have ran his best time ever. He's happy that he beat his old time. He doesn't care about second, first, second, third is nice, but you have to be on your own clock. Like, did I do better than I did before? You have to be really intentional about, is this the decision I want, or am I making decisions based on what other people want? And it's such an important lesson, because what happens is people say, well, I'm going to promote you, or I'm not going to promote you, or you're not ready. And you take this as like valid. It's one man's opinion. It's one person's opinion. And I don't want people to get set in stone on things. I've talked to people where they're like, well, it's going to take me 10 years to be partner, so I'm going to give it 10 more years. And then they will not talk to any other law firm. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, this place might think it takes 10 years. Go out there and find out. Maybe they all say 10 years, but there's going to be one that might say, you could be a partner in 3 years. You're great. And so I don't want people to limit themselves by other people's time limits on themselves. That's so huge.
When we talk about mentor and coaching, are they the same thing, or are they different people in your life?
Yeah. So executive coach is extremely different than a mentor. So executive coach, usually you pay for it. Sometimes your company can pay for it. This is someone that's a non-biased person that does not work with you, that helps you work through issues at work, complicated issues where you're trying to navigate how to handle something. So I'm making it up. I don't get along with another executive at the company. We don't see eye to eye. I'm going to now work with my executive coach on role playing the conversation to get my point across. Hey, but every time I talk, he interrupts me. Okay, try this, try that. Have you done this? Have you done that? I'm thinking about an org change. I got to now change my whole organization and message it. Executive coach talks about your blind spots. They say, Errol, I know your strengths, but I know one of your weaknesses is communication. So with this org change, we really got to spell out who you're going to communicate to, how you're going to say it, what you're going to do. So they help you be a better leader, executive coach. Mentor can be internal, can be external. Should never be your boss, because you want to talk to your mentor about your boss. So you can't have your boss be your mentor, because how do you talk smack about your boss? You have to talk smack about your boss. So it can be internal, can be external, but your mentor is someone who you're like, and this is the way I talk about it in the book. Either they have characteristics that resonates with you and you're like, wow, every time I see them, they have this swagger about them that I want to learn from. I don't know what it is, but they're just good. They the way they are in the room, the way they talk, the way they make the decisions, their repertoire, their rapport with people, something about them really draws you to them. You want to learn from them. Great person to be a mentor. And I talk about in the book how to be a mentee. There's like lessons on how to be a good mentee to choose a mentor. Or there's mentors where it's, I am not good at these things. I'm poor at public speaking, but they're great at public speaking. So I want to attach myself to them to help round out my opportunities of improvement. Those are mentors. They guide you. You have to set the stage on the agenda. Mentor shouldn't last forever. It should be, I really would like to get information about XYZ. And so that's a finite amount of time where you're working with them on something. And then you have a check-in, like, how is it going? Do you feel this is beneficial for you? Because it should be a two-way relationship. You shouldn't just go on and on and on in perpetuity and never end. And so you want to give them an opportunity to have an out. Like, you helped me through this part. Great. Let's reconsider. Do I have a new project? Should we call it a day? That's a mentor. And then there's champions, or what people call sponsors. Totally separate. They're not executive coaches. They're not mentors. Sponsors or champions are people that are in the rooms you're not in that fight on your behalf. So they're in the boardroom and someone says, that's going to be a big project next year. Who do you think can take it? And your sponsor or your champion is in the boardroom saying, Kelly is the perfect person. So they're speaking about you in the rooms you can't get in. And those type of folks, they choose you. They choose you. You don't choose them. They choose you.
Thank you for that breakdown. You know, I want people to get this book. This is such an important book. Like, thank you for taking time out to do this. Because you didn't have to do this. You could have just told your friends and kept it within, but you shared it. And I think that just says so much about you. You know, I don't want to break down these chapters because I want people to read the book, but I want to acknowledge that I wish this book was out when I was starting out my journey after college, because the navigating and surviving bad bosses, that would have helped me. That would help me
Yeah.
break down. And just so there's so many just gems in this book. This is one of those books that you can use as a reference. You can read over and over again, because each chapter, I feel like we've all had an incident that happened that this could be helpful, that we could refer back to. This
Yeah.
is also like one of those reference book, like the 48 Laws of Power. I love it. I love it. My last question to you is, what is next for Dr. Errol Pierre? Because you're doing it all. What's next?
Oh man. So I definitely want to speak about the book more. And you brought it up, talking about like surviving bad bosses. I
Mhm.
even break down the do's and don'ts for the email you send when you leave an organization. These are things that I learned through messing up. I didn't have a rubric on how to do it. So for the next year, 2023 is filled with these opportunities where I can talk about the lessons. Because here's what's going on in our country. Recession is coming. I don't know when, but the shoe's going to drop. Recession is coming. The data says it, and I talk about it. The first people that are let go from an organization are Black and brown people when the recession hits. And so I would like this book to be in folks' hands, because they're going to be navigating treacherous waters. We all will be. And then make a very good decision about the next place you're going to be. Take the time, not just for you to be interviewed, but you interview the company, interview their diversity, equity, and inclusion philosophy, interview how many people of color are at the upper echelons of the company. Find out, do they have metrics that they're tracking? Are the bosses paid on metrics for diversity? Does your boss hire other people of color? When was the last time a person of color got raised? He's got a raise or promotion? What's pay equity look like? Like, these are questions, and I talk about that in the later chapters, we should be asking to force the envelope. So that's really my main focus. Is there, if people say, is there another book in me? There is, maybe in a year or two, but I want to get this book off the ground first.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Nonstop. Congratulations once again on your doctorate. That is such a great accomplishment, time consuming. You're still smiling, you still have hair, and then you put out this book. So I'm in awe of you. You are a very inspirational human being. So I just thank you for your existence, Errol. And it's been a pleasure. I just want to advocate and just recommend everyone go get this book, The Way Up, Climbing the Corporate Mountain as a Professional of Color. Thank you for your time, Dr. Errol Pierre. It's the Kelly Kinkaid Show. Until next time.